Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Kid Russell speaking. For quite a few years, I've been in association with many of the leading female impersonators of the country, both in the capacity of producing and staging them in musical reviews and in writing and coaching them in individual roles. And every so often, one appears on the scene that is really fun to work with, and more important, is gifted in the art of fast repartee. So if you enjoy a little mud in your eye, it's my pleasure at this time to present a really outstanding personality in the art of the risque. Let's sit back and really tie one on with the provocative Mr. Ty Bennett.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the clap. God knows I've had everything else. And good evening. Welcome to our first show. We're so glad you all could come. We hope perhaps one of us will be as fortunate before daybreak. But I doubt that, what with the way things have been going. As the gentleman told you, my name is Turlor Lifshitz, and we do want you just to relax and let your hair down and have a gay time with us. I'm quite sure you know your reputations were shot to hell the minute you came in this joint. You're all under suspicion. So now that you're here, relax and enjoy it, or we'll lock the doors and make you one of us. Or just make you. I think that's what the hell you all need. I'm not sure. You know what they say, if you can't lick 'em, join 'em. I licked 'em and I joined 'em, and here I am. You know something? My mother would kill me if she knew what I were doing. She thinks I'm still hustling in St. Louis. But I fooled her. Here I am in New York with all you nice people. And I can say very honestly, darlings, I don't know what the hell I can do here for you tonight. I know what I'd like to do. I'd really like this joint to be a supermarket in the morning. And let's face it, we are doing rather well now as a fruit market, so why spoil a good thing, I always say. However, I have had a couple of requests tonight. Unfortunately, the microphone won't fit. Did you think it would? Well, I'd get a hell of a charge out of it, if nothing else, wouldn't I? Mike is so thin with such a strange head. Reminds me of my 10th husband removed. Several times. And thereby hangs a tale. I really shouldn't talk about my husband. He's here tonight. He's back there in the corner with my wife having a drink. No, don't laugh, please. It's a terribly confusing arrangement. I never know which way to turn when I get in bed. However, we have settled the whole thing very amicably. We sort of decided to have a daisy chain, and I'm the anchor man. That way everybody has a ball. Well, let me tell you about this part of the show. This is what we call the elegant part of this bitchy shindig. We have many goodies planned for you. We have, for instance, a little game we play, a thing I invented called Swallow the Leader. Of course, I'm the leader. We had something planned for you, too, that had to do with a girl and a pony. Unfortunately, the pony died this afternoon. So unless we have someone in the audience who'd like to stand in for a pony. No comers, if you'll excuse the expression. Well, if any of you decide, let me know. That way the aristocrats can do their act. To replace our little pony act, of course, the management had a divine idea. They were going to have two little girls fly in from Chicago who billed themselves as the Cherry Sisters, but their plane was late and they got laid over in Cleveland, so that screwed that off. So I'm afraid you're stuck with me. And as I say, I really don't know what I can do for you here. I suppose perhaps I could tell you a little bit about myself. And, well, as a matter of fact, I will. I just finished a trip around the world. Welcome, fellow travelers. I knew there had to be one or two of you here tonight. I couldn't possibly be alone all by myself in this joint. Well, anyway, our tour did start in the United States. And while we were traveling, we noticed that in the various sections of the country, the trends in entertaining all seem to be a great deal the same. We surmise that in order to be a great success in show business today, you must play with something in public. No. I can give you several good examples of this. We have Elvis Presley, for one. He's an excellent example. He plays with his guitar. We have Roberta Sherwood, who bangs a cymbal in public, which I think is terribly chic. Then, of course, we have the originator of the whole trend, Arthur Godfrey. If you recall, Arthur is the man who had Lipton's tea by the balls. He played a ukulele. Then we had the rock and roll bit, and from there we had the calypso craze, where we had Mary Ann at the seashore pounding sand, which was a good place for her, too. So, I think, perhaps being that you are such a nice, folky type audience, I shall sing some folk tunes for you. I figure I can folk these tunes up as much as anything, more so in some cases. I've chosen several things. The first tune was recorded by 4 lesbian friends of mine several years ago. And, of course, it went to the #1 spot on the hit parade. And, as a matter of fact, they recently had a thing going for them called Lollipop. I understand they took a licking on that, too. Anyway, I'm sure you do remember that grand folky old tune, Mr. Handman, Bring Me Some Cream. Mr. Sandman, you evil queen, you put the sand in the vase. No, Charlie, what the hell are you playing? You must excuse him, darlings. Whenever he plays that in that tempo, we do what we call the gay version. Charlie, you must be very careful. We have a terribly select audience here tonight. I don't know who the hell selected them, but they're very select. Let's try something a little bit more in keeping with their taste, shall we? This old house ain't made a quarter, this old house ain't made a dime. The show gets any queerer, hell, we'll all be doing time. Don't laugh, they'll get you first. Of course, tonight, if we do get pinched, I insist on having a seat in the wagon. I'm getting sick of hitting my head getting in and out of that damn thing every night. The other night, it was so crowded, I had to sit on one of the policeman's laps. And that nightstick was just, well, I'd like to see what the hell the day stick is like. Well, as you might have guessed, darling, I do have a bit of a problem here with my accompanist. Not too long ago, we were playing out west, and we had a delightful band. We had 10 good pieces. We got to the Arizona state line, and the inspecting officials asked us if we had any fruit with us, and we lost the whole damn band. Consequently, I'm left alone with only my French pianist here, Jacques Straub, who does very well. Well, now, let's impose on you here for just a moment. Let's ask you all to use your imagination. Now, you must have imagination, or you wouldn't be here tonight. Let's suppose it's a gorgeous summer evening, and you're out with your girlfriend or your boyfriend, whichever you prefer this week. The top is down on the car, among other things. She has her head in your lap. She looks up into your big brown eyes and sings a lovely ballad that goes something like this. Don't cry, Joe. It'll grow, it'll grow. Oh, you know Joe, too. The story of my life. Every place I go, Joe, Joe, Joe. Well, yes, that's the story of my life, and of course it's kind of a problem. And it's the story of really what happened with this damn tour. Actually, we started out as sort of a tour de force, and it ended up that we were being forced to tour. But we did travel in high style, darlings. It was divine. We traveled by Greyhound bus. You know what I mean. Stop and go, stop and go, stop and go. Then when you want to go, they won't stop. So our little tour did take us to Canada. And while I was in Canada, I had a divine time. I picked up on some French expressions, and I think perhaps I'd like to translate one or two of them for you now. For instance, hors de combat. That means there's a fight in the ladies' room. Or Jeanne d'Arc. That means the light is out in the men's room. Or la petite chose. That means your fly is open. And God knows I wouldn't harm one unless it was open. Anyway, we had many, many interesting things happen to us in Canada. For instance, we found a charming little hotel. Oh, the French color and character and so on. It was a very nice place called the Hotel Elysee, or Easy-Lay, whichever you prefer. It was a divine little place, really. It had one or two drawbacks, of course. For instance, the walls were so thin, occasionally you could hear the girl in the next room changing her mind. And one evening, we had a couple that apparently had just been married living next door. They had moved in. Oh, the newlyweds were just out of this world, my dear. And earlier in the evening, it seemed that they were having an argument. I heard this horrible pounding on the door. And I finally figured out that perhaps the woman had just decided to go make herself ready for her bridal bed. And what happened? The man was knocking on the door, trying to get in. He bang, 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 bang. She says, never mind, darling, I'll just be a few minutes. So in a few minutes, he was knocking again. Bang, bang, bang. So he went over to the door, and he said, listen, dear, what's the holdup? She says, I know what you're knocking for. He says, yes, but you don't know what I'm knocking with. So finally she was ready, and she came out and got into the bed, and she said, oh, excuse me, I must say my prayers before I go to sleep. So she got down on her knees and said, now I lay me down to sleep. He said, the hell you do. Well, so much for the Hotel Elysee and Canada. Well, our tour, of course, had to continue, so then we swung way down south of the border. While I was down in South America, I had the great pleasure of meeting the biggest bull shipper down there, Bill O'Dwyer. And, of course, one afternoon, I was out sort of cruising around with some friends of mine, a few sailors that we had the pleasure of meeting, and we saw a charming little tobacco shop. In the shop window, they had a divine sign that read, buy now, fly later. Well, of course, we couldn't take them up on that. However, we did meet Jose. Oh, what a man this one was. Talk about a green thumb. The stuff he was growing was that high. Well, of course, our tour continued, and we wound up in Italy. It was divine. Venice, especially. I had a wonderful time. Summertime in Venice. I met a very charming man who wanted me to stay there and become, of all things, a prostitute. He thought I had particular talents because I could swim both sides of the canal at the same time. Well, of course, while I was there, I sort of developed a little yen for collecting glass and various objects d'art. And I went into a charming little glass shop that was owned by Rossano Brazzi. I was looking for Venetian glass, a Venetian goblet, as a matter of fact. Well, literally translated, that's a small Italian sailor. Well, so much for Italy. Of course, our tour couldn't possibly be concluded without making a visit to Greece. While I was there, I met a charming, charming little Greek boy. He was divine. He came from a rather large family, and if you know these Greeks, of course, their family ties are very, very strong. For instance, I offered to bring the little boy to this country, but he didn't want to leave his brothers behind, and that did cause quite a problem for me. Well, of course, we finally got back to America, and we went directly to the West Coast. And while I was on the West Coast, I had the pleasure of appearing in a motion picture at Pornographic Studios. Now, of course, it was only an 8x10 glossy, but it was a picture. Actually, really, it was a lung x-ray. And don't laugh, darling, because you may see it on your Easter seals. While I was out on the West Coast, of course, they were filming one of the best sellers, Gone with the Wind. And, of course, every actress in Hollywood felt she was just right for the role of the heroine, Scarlett OHara. Of course, notwithstanding was Miss Betty Davis. Betty felt she was made for the role. Unfortunately, she wasn't made soon enough because they gave it to Vivian Leigh. Anyway, I think it would be kind of a camp if I did an impression of Betty for you, had she played the role in Gone with the Wind. And I think I'll do the famous birthing scene for you. Now, if you recall the story, Atlanta is being stormed by the Yankees. Melanie is about to have a baby. And, of course, Scarlett is left with no one but her little slave girl, Prissy, to help with the birth of the child. So now just relax a moment. And we might have seen this had Betty Davis played the role of Scarlett OHara in Gone with the Wind. Get me, Scarlett O'Davis, girl midwife. Melanie's about to have a baby. Look at her. Judging from the size of her, she might be giving birth to a nation. I wonder where my little slave girl Prissy can be. Heavens, there she is down in the courtyard, lying on the grass, with nothing covering her but a thin boy. Prissy! Come up here! What took you so long? I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat the bejesus out of you. Nothing but a cotton-picking masochist digs pain. Now listen, Prissy. Melanie's about to have a baby, and I want you to help me with the birth. What's that? But Miss Scarlett, I don't know nothing about birthing babies. I'm a lesbian. Really? Well, better to be a dyke than a seawall, I always say. Now listen, Prissy. I want you to run next door and get me the following articles for the birth of the child. I'll need some string, a plumber's helper, a jack, and 2 cans of drainer. Cleanliness is next to godliness. And don't forget the buckets of gin for the dry martinis. And hurry! Wouldn't anybody like to kiss a sweet old-fashioned girl? Skip-de-dip-de-doo. What is it, Melanie? Oh, shut your hole. I wonder what's keeping Prissy. She's been gone so long. Heavens, here she comes now, and she's so excited. What is it, Prissy? What is it? Miss Scarlett, the Yankees is coming and it's gonna burn Atlanta. Really, Prissy, really? I've always wanted to see that damn city in flames. But Miss Scarlett is gonna ravage and pillage and pilfer. Really, Prissy, really? Well, pack. We've got to get up the old dirt road to Tara. But Miss Scarlett is gonna rape all the women. Really, Prissy? Well, unpack. We're staying. Well, so much for Hollywood. Hippity-hop to the cat house to get a piece of Fanny. A girl for you and a boy for me and a les for Sister Annie. That is one of my famous Jewish madrigals. My sea chanties. Yeah. Hollywood, the land of fruit and nuts. If you're not one, you're the other. I understand that things have gotten so bad out there that they put a fence around Pershing Square to keep the fruit from picking the people. Oh, God! Of course, actors and actresses are fabulous, and of course they realize they've got what it takes. Well, my dear, I know I've got what it takes too. But if I can sell it, I'm sure as hell gonna sit on it. Now pay attention, because you may just learn something here. Now I got what it takes, and it's breaking my heart to give it away. I said give it away. Now I've got the stuff that'll make these old daddies pay. They pay and they pay. I've been saving it up since the Lord knows when. Ain't playing Santa Claus to none of you men. I've had it so long, I hate to abuse it. But if I'm ever broke, I'll be damn sure to use it. 'Cause I got that thing, that certain thing the town is trying to get. I said trying to get. But this big baby ain't gonna part with it yet. Now you can bet. I was born in Paris, raised in Rome. If you don't like my crackers, honey, leave my box alone. 'Cause I got what it takes, and it's breaking my heart to have to give it away. Second chorus, same damn thing. And it's breaking my heart to give it away. I said give it away. Now I got the stuff that'll make these old daddies pay. They pay and they pay. I've been saving it up since the Lord knows when. Ain't playing Santa Claus to none of you men. I've had it so long, I hate to abuse it. But if I'm ever broke, hot damn it, I'll bruise it. 'Cause I got that thing, that certain thing the town is trying to get. I said trying to get. But this big baby ain't gonna part with it yet. Now you can bet. Now you took me to the circus, and what did I do? When I saw what the elephant had, I wouldn't go home with you. 'Cause I got what it takes, and it's breaking my heart to have to give it away. How about me doing A Good Man Is Hard to Find? All right? And a hard one's even better. You know where I can find one? Let's try a hard man that's good to find for these nice people. Oh, God. Okay? Yeah. Now a good man is hard to find. I always get the other kind. Now just when you think that he's your pal, you look around and see him with another gal, and then you rave, you even crave to see that man down deep in his grave. So if your man's nice, take my advice. Hug him in the morning, kiss him in the night. Give him lots of loving, honey, and treat that man right. Because a good man nowadays is hard to find. Yeah, now, girls, you know, on the other hand, a hard man's damn good to find. But I always get the Shorty George kind. Now, just when I think that he's my pal, look around and he's with another gal, and then I rave, yes, how I crave to see that louse down deep in his grave. So if your man's nice, my dear, take the madam's advice. In the morning, in the night, give him lots of loving, honey, but keep the damn thing tight. Because a good man nowadays is hard to find. What the hell does that mean? We're having a square dance after the show. Stick around. I think you'd fit in pretty well. Oh. Oh, listen, I got fired in Philly for somebody saying that. Give her another drink. Well, let's get down here to ringside and see what's going on around here tonight. Well, I suppose you have everything all figured out, you lovely girls down here. Incidentally, are you girls professional? You're not. Well, you can't all be madams. Or can you? What the hell, you can't tell nowadays. You know, they do start young. Well, I suppose you do have this all figured out. You know, like, who has one and who hasn't, and who's AC and who's DC. You must remember one thing, darlings. We're just like radios. Plug us in, turn us on, we work on both turns. And also, you must remember one thing. We may have our mother's features, but we sure as hell have our father's fixtures.
Hey, come on, you're not a real woman.
Not a real woman?
No.
Are you kidding? I'm probably more of a man than you are and more of a woman than you'll ever get. Or have. And listen, dear, while I think of it, you better shut that hole before you get an offer. Either that or we'll throw a toilet seat around your head and we'll all use you. Oh, well. Oh, and speaking of fixtures, you know, I have a friend here in New York who is a real camp. Maybe you know her. Her name is Christine. And speaking of Christine, with the way planes and boats are leaving for Denmark, hell, in 10 years, we won't need falsies or anything else anyway. Christine led the way. Well, she might have gone to Denmark for the fixtures, but she sure as hell stopped in Akron, Ohio for the features, if you know what I mean. And speaking of Christine, darlings, I understand she's doing a fabulous new television show that comes in on WOMB TV. The thing called Wait Till Your Son Turns Nelly. Sponsored by a soap product called Fug. Their singing jingle is, if Rinso won't rinse it and Does won't do it, fug it. They also guarantee anything washed in Fug comes out soft and fluffy. And darling, you look like you were Fug today. Hippity hop to the cat house to get a piece. Never mind. Oh, well, don't look down. Help me. Oh. Well, I don't know. The business of working of a female impersonator more is getting to be no novelty. And, you know, this is a song I really don't know, you know. But it's a kind of a campy thing. And, read the writing first. This is about Liza Johnson, and she lived next door to me. And she had quite a problem because every now and then her husband got carrying on too much. You know, they'd turn on a little bit and carry on and have a ball and sort of fight. And right now, if I may, I'd like to dish you a little bit about Liza Johnson. Now, Liza Johnson and her man had a falling out. He said, get someone else if you can, because I'm cutting out. Things got tough, and he came back last night at 9 o'clock. He tried his key in the old front door, but the key wouldn't fit the lock. He pushed it in and turned it round and round and took it out. And just as he was about to try again, he heard Miss Liza shout, "You've got the right key, but the wrong keyhole. Couldn't do with you to save my soul. Yesterday I went down to the hardware store, and I put a new lock on my front door. I got a new man who is better than you. He starts loving where you get through. Take my tip, leave my door, 'cause your key don't fit my lock no more. You got the right key, but you're working in the wrong keyhole. Yeah, Daddy, listen, 'cause I'm telling you. You got the right key, but the wrong keyhole. Couldn't get along with you to save my soul. Now yesterday I went down to the hardware store. I got me a brand new lock for my front door. I've got a new man who is better than you. Now he starts loving where you get through. So take my tip and leave my place, 'cause I don't want to see your homely face. You got the right key, but you're working in the wrong keyhole. Yeah, the right key, but you're working in the wrong keyhole. I just rewrote that song. Yeah, I have another bit I'd like to do for you. This evening I'm being brought to you through the courtesy of Embargo Braziers. Remember, girls, what nature has forgotten, embargo does with cotton. You're also being featured by Obscure Corsetiers. And Obscure spelled backwards is your box. Embargo spelled backwards is oh grab me. Motel spelled backwards is let 'em. Evil spelled backwards is live. So let 'em live evilly backwards, it's your box. Oh, I haven't told you a fairy tale. Shh. That's part of the fairy tale. That's the way we get into it. Boy. I was talking about my tour before I got hung up with all this jazz. Now, where was I? Oh, yes, in Hollywood. Well, after I left Hollywood, I played around the West. And, well, I finally wound up in Texas. Dallas, Texas, as a matter of fact. And while I was there, I had the pleasure of renewing an old acquaintance. I met a young man I was reared with several times, and his name was Magnolia Calhoun. Now, if you know anything of the history of Texas, I'm sure the name of Calhoun must be familiar to you. For instance, Magnolia had a very, very fabulous and very famous grandmother. You would have loved Mag's granny, but it would have cost you. She's one of those girls. And she was famous, for instance, for bringing the first white man's peace to the Indian. She had a tribe of gay Indians she liked a great deal. She called them her Sweet Sioux. I remember every afternoon, Granny would go out and sort of roam among the cacti, and she'd wave to a little Indian princess sitting way up on the edge of a canyon. She'd wave to the Rim Queen. Then she'd go back into the house and sort of socialize and visit with Beauregard. Beauregard was her husband, Colonel Beauregard Calhoun. He was the major reason the South lost the war. But he still was famous. As a matter of fact, they erected a statue to his memory. You can still see it standing in the heart of Dallas, a gorgeous thing done in Italian marble of the Colonel mounting a horse, which is no easy task. Well, anyway, I asked, of course, Magnolia, did Granny still tell the story she told us when we were very young? I remember when we were kids, she'd gather us all about her, and she'd spread out her huge crinoline skirt. And she'd stand, "Children, I'm going to tell you a story." And invariably, Magnolia would say, "Oh, goody, Granny, tell us about the time he was a whore in Chicago." Granny would say, "No, Magnolia, I can't do that. That isn't nice, but I will tell you a fairy story." And I think perhaps this evening would be a divine time to tell you all a fairy tale. One of my favorite fairy tales is the story of Red Riding Hood. Now, darlings, you must remember one thing. This is a fairy tale from the Book of Fairy Tales, as told by an old fairy. Me. And it goes something like this, Chip. Once upon a boy, I had a time. No. Once upon a time, there lived in the city of Wasserman, Wisconsin, that's 10 miles south of Gonorrhea, a family by the name of Hood. And they had a daughter whose name was Celeste, although she was built more like an oboe. One day they decided to send Celeste to girls' finishing school, so they did, and when she was finished with the girls, she came home. She came running into the house one afternoon. She said, "Mother, mother, mother, I must talk to you." Her mother said, "Go away, I'm busy." She said, "But mother, I have something very important to discuss with you." Her mother said, "Go away, Celeste, I'm preparing dinner." She said, "But mother, I think I'm a lesbian." Her mother said, "Good, go upstairs and shave, we're expecting guests for dinner." Well, her life had become so complex. Her mother turned peculiar and her father changed sex. So she decided to go out and start living with the most fabulous little piece of nicest girl you'd ever want to meet. One day when she was getting ready to go to work, her friend said to her, "Say, Red, today when you're driving the truck, I want you to go by Granny's house. I packed a basket full of goodies, things like KY and Camphofenique, and a large jar of Vaseline, things a nice old lady can use." She said, "Okay, Butch, you give me the basket and I'll take it down to her." So she took the basket and threw it over her arm and put a jellied asp under the other arm and went out and jumped into her trunk. She started off down the road. As she was going along, she noticed she was running out of gas. So she pulled into a gas station. And, of course, the gas station was run by who else but... That's it, the wolf. Well, he took one look at Red Riding Hood and flipped because he in his whole entire life had never seen anything like this girl. She had muscles that wouldn't quit. He walked up to the truck and he said, "Hiya, baby, what can I do for you?" She said, "Obviously nothing." He said, "What do you want?" She said, "Fill it up." He said, "What the hell do you think I'm talking about?" She said, "Just gas, Mac, just gas. Don't get gay with me." So after he filled her up, he said, "Say, Red, where are you going?" She said, "I'm going down the road to visit Granny." He said, "Do you want to be careful, because the Vice Squad has a blockade down that way, and you won't get through." She said, "Thanks a hell of a lot, Mac. I'll take the long way around," and off she goes. Well, the wolf had been out the night before and was just full of tricks. So he took a shortcut to Granny's house. He got down there and he knocked on the door. Granny laid down the Kinsey report and says, "Come on in." Well, the wolf walked in and he looked at Granny for a minute. She looked at him. She said, "Why, it's the wolf. What are you going to do?" He said, "I'm going to eat you." She said, "Crazy, man, crazy." After he gobbled her up, he put on her drag and got in bed to lie and wait for Red Riding Hood. Well, pretty soon along comes Red. She knocked on the door. The wolf says, "Come in." Red walked in and she looked at the wolf for a minute and she says, Why, Granny, how you've changed. What big eyes you have. He says, "You know what they're for." She said, "Well, what big ears you have." He said, "You know what they're for." She said, "Well, what a big mouth you have." He said, "You know what that's for." She said, "Well, what are you going to do?" He said, "I'm going to eat you." She says, "You going to eat me whole?" He said, "No, I'm going to spit that out." So he did, and she did. And she and the wolf have lived happily ever after. So remember, darling, fairy tales can come true. I hope it happens to you if you're young at heart. Oh, fairy tales are divine. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed that because, you see, of course, it is divine now when you're a little older to take stories like that and sort of reread them. You know, not too long ago, I was going over my children's garden of perverses. Maybe you remember yours. For instance, Jack and Jill went up a hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came. Or, well, let's see. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children she didn't know what to do. Obviously. Or Peter Pumpkin Eater had a wife and couldn't. And then, of course, we have that hippity-hop to the cat house to get a piece of Fanny. A girl for you and a boy for me and a les for Sister Annie. Oh, well, so much for your lesson today, children. If you have any questions, come back later and we'll explain it all to you in Braille. Now I'd like to sing 10 choruses of Hot Nuts for you, but we're going to do it as a bell. Nuts, nuts, red hot nuts. Hear the story about the gay minister? Like long hymns? You know, with the way, in Life magazine, not too long ago, we were doing this bit earlier, and we were discussing about, outer space and unidentified flying objects and things, Well, we have come to one conclusion. I have finally decided what a flying saucer really is. Actually, flying saucers are the angels throwing away their diaphragms. I heard there was only one Peter in heaven. And my friend Kitty Russell, she's a cant, my dear. Talk about a dumb Dora. You know what? She started douching with grape juice. She heard the purple people eaters were coming. Well, being that this is all sort of off the cuff, well, I feel like a million. I'll take them one at a time. Anyway, how the hell much more am I supposed to do now? I've done everything but cut my wrists. What, are you looking for fruit juice? My God, you realize it's $1 million worth of material. Talking about strange situations, you people think you are seeing a show from where you're sitting. You should see what we see from the stage some nights. It's amazing. First of all, the first thing people do, they'll come into the room, they'll look around, they want to be sure there isn't anyone here who they know or who knows them. They sit down and they sort of look around and they say, oh, look, there's one, I know that's one. Oh, there's another one over there. They look at us, they laugh at us, they talk about us. And they can hardly wait to get home and try it out for themselves. Next year, they'll probably be here doing my act. Well, the other evening, a charming gentleman was in, a rather southern gentleman with a great big drawl, and he asked me would I sing a song about the South. And, of course, at intermission, prior to this show, I had a lady ask me would I sing a song about Alaska. Well, of course, that sort of presented a problem because the South and Alaska, there just isn't anything there. So we sort of combined something that we thought would be rather interesting. And it's a little thing, it's a little, sort of a quickie thing called, it goes something like this. Mammy's little baby loves blubber, blubber. Mammy's little baby loves blubber soup. By the way, you know what they call a lesbian in Alaska? A Klondike. Oh, thank you, Simon. Isn't he divine? Take a 5-minute break. Stop the clocks. Did you have your coffee, Charlie? I know what I'm doing. Let me sing. Give me a melody. I don't need very much to be living the life I love. If a song takes you away from care, look around and you'll find me there, living the life I love. Just let me earn my daily keep. I don't need a bank full. And when I lay me down to sleep, if I just wake up in the morning, I'm thankful. In my heart, I have my treasure stored. Thank the Lord, I'm living the life I love. Just let me earn my daily keep. I don't need a bank full. And when I lay me down to sleep, if I just wake up in the morning, I'm thankful. In my heart, I have my